So I'd like to welcome Steve Wiesenthal, and he will be presenting his surfboard side table.
Hi, I'm Steve. Welcome to Asmbly. I wanted to show you guys a very beginner project, or what I consider to be a beginner project. This is a project, one of my very first projects I did after I joined Asmbly, just over 2 years ago. I joined Asmbly because I wanted to have access to a big CNC. I was doing a lot of epoxy river tables like you see all over YouTube at home, and I was doing it with a router sled, and it was incredibly dangerous, and I almost cut my hand off. I didn't want to do that anymore. So I wanted to use the CNC as a big planer, essentially. In my first class, actually, I worked with James after class on this picture here on the right. It's a walnut and epoxy shuffleboard table. It's in my dining room right now, where it kind of just unleashed my love of CNC. And so you're going to be seeing a lot in here. My presentation's a love song to the CNC. But I think the CNC is pretty awesome. I think we've got a pretty good curriculum here, and so that'll be a key part of what I'm talking about today. This is supposed to be, in theory, a beginner project. It's also supposed to be something that's a good crossover from those of you that are more traditional woodworkers, because most of the stuff of this was actually traditional woodworking, whether it was using jointers and planers or the table saw, that type of stuff. And so the idea of kind of trying to show you a little bit of a hybrid project within here. I made a lot of mistakes in this project. And people like hearing about mistakes. I'm going to share them with you. I kind of feel like we learn our best from our mistakes. I was talking earlier, I can make this so easily now, or anything else, because I've made the mistakes on this that I'm not carrying through to the subsequent projects. And so it's all about how do you make those mistakes on your cheap, your easy, your small, before you go big and expensive. It's kind of a key lesson of what we're doing. I love this so much. I bought my own CNC. I started teaching the CNC class here. You'll see more on that later. I encourage you to take our CNC classes here. They're fantastic. We've got a whole new curriculum that's coming out in the CNC. It's great. My inspirations, I built this board on the left here previously with the Shaper Origin, which is our handheld CNC. I had one at home in my garage before I joined Asmbly. I had leftover wood from it. So you'll see a lot of similar wood tones between them. This is actually where it was in its final space. I had a little nook kind of between two reclining chairs. I wanted to have the ability to charge my phone on, put the remotes on. That's what kind of led to this. So I started surfing the internet, trying to find ideas of what can I do with all this crazy wood, and I came across this picture here on the right that they wanted $950 for a surfboard. But it was the idea I needed to kind of get going on doing things. This is what I'm going to call my first blank. You'll notice the wood tone on this is slightly different from the wood tone in the finished project you'll see here, because I screwed this one up. This was just kind of traditional woodworking of jointing, planing. Like I said, this project was within the first 2 or 3 months of when I joined Asmbly. I never had access to a helical head jointer or planer before. The ability to actually glue up a flat blank is pretty darn neat when you're used to doing it in your garage and you don't know what you're doing. And so it was a really unique experience to be able to do that. You can see this on the tables out there. This was the first one you'll see. There's got these red stripes in here, which is not in here. It also has a bit more kind of a tapered design within it. Someone I'm sure is going to ask, where did I get the design? If you ever take one of my classes, I always say there's so many great free resources out there on the internet. Silhouette Garden, you can use it for vinyl cutting, you can use it for lasers, you can use it for the CNC. It's free vector files. And so I just went and found a nice little free surfboard design and then did the node editor and kind of made it the way I wanted to do. This is where I made my first cut. This is right before I started yelling bloody murder out in the shop. You can see. Yeah, you were there. Charlie was here that day. This is where I was so excited because I had my first miter joint all right up, ready to go. What you didn't see and what Charlie did see is I then made the cut down here, and I forgot to flip my board. So my miter was in exactly the wrong direction. So it would have been like a Z as compared to like a C. That doesn't work though when you're trying to grain match all the way around. You'll also notice on this first one, it was very, very curvilinear, right? If that's a word on the outside. When it comes to miters, especially when it comes to clamping, it's nice to have some flat areas as well. So this is what I like to call my trial one. And yes, this was not savable. So the next problem became, well, I designed this around all the scraps I had out in my garage of fun colored wood. How do you overcome that? That's where this little design on the left came in. This is just a cheap piece of masonite. I went and changed my design. You'll see first off, there's kind of some flat areas. You can't maybe hopefully see it. Some flat areas where I'm going to have my miters. I carved it out just to kind of work on my design. I also used it for work holding, you'll see in a minute. But I also did it because I literally was taking pieces of wood and holding up against it and figuring out how I could glue them together to exactly make, that's the order that's in here, because I didn't have long enough pieces of this, for instance, to go in the center of the surfboard. And so it's how can I make it work within that? That was a glue up. Here you can see I actually cut my miters first. This is still square here in the right-hand picture. Before I cut it out the design, was working through how do I get it together, how do I work through my joinery, using some corner clamps. This is actually on our old CNC. So for those of you who've been here a long time, this was our old home-built CNC that's not out there anymore. We have 2 brand new CNCs out there that are great. But I'm actually, you can see this is my little masonite design. I had double-sided tape holding it down. I also had some sacrificial boards on the outsides here, kind of holding it in place. This was a bit of a pucker factor in terms of cutting this, because I was on my second blank. I was weeks into a blank on this. It's a lesson I try and teach everyone I'm teaching CNC now is never start with your final blank. Always start with a piece of scrap wood out of the scrap cart. Always do an air cut where you're cutting 3 inches above your thing and you're kind of sitting there looking at your router bit as it's going over it and everything else. Things you learn the hard way once you learn the hard way, you don't never make that mistake again. This is me putting it together for the first time with a bunch of paper towel rolls out in the shop, holding it up. Ignore the Nautilus spirals. This is for joinery, I use dominoes. We've got a domino joiner out there, so it cuts these little mortises that you can then use tenons to help secure, and that provides a lot of strength. I mean, this thing is surprisingly beefy, or surprisingly strong for how thin it is, I should say. It also kind of, as I went along with it, I was having fun with it. I kind of finished it. I was like, this is kind of boring. It's just a C. So I wanted to add this as a place to store remote controls was kind of the idea. I added a fin, because why the hell not? It's not a real surfboard without a fin, even though I'm not a surfer, so I know those don't go well enough together. But if I haven't talked about wood species yet, maple, purple heart, cherry, oak, cherry. This is something different. I don't remember what this was. That's Paduke. This is old redwood. So literally it was just using up all the scraps in my garage. Was kind of a fun way of putting it together. This is my first time using Rubio, which is everyone on YouTube swears by because it's really expensive and it's really easy. It's really durable. This thing's been done for 2.5 years. I put my fingers all over it. Feel free to come up and do the same. It lives next to my couch. I've got dogs and kids, and they beat the hell out of it. I went home at one point this week, and my dogs had knocked it over. It's durable, and if I ever need to fix it up, I can go and just scuff it up, hit it with some more Rubio, which is great. It's compared to like a poly or something like a film finish, and so it's a really user-friendly, maker-friendly finish as well. Lessons learned and follow-up. I've screwed up, and if I made the mistakes early on of thinking through my clamping strategy and how to do that, I won't make those mistakes again. I talked a bit about air cuts, templates, and scrap pieces. I'm a big believer in learning through doing. I believe in process over perfection because I learn more from process. And so I like doing a whole lot of projects, and that's how I learn. It's also kind of meets the interests. But without coming here, learning the CNC and doing this, I wouldn't have done any of these other projects that are on screen now, which I consider to kind of be a bit more advanced. But like I said, I like epoxy, I like CNC, and these are all CNC epoxy classes. And so I think it's, how do you start small, start scaling, going from there, I think is really important. We have a maker market here every fall. You may notice the same wood from the piece I screwed up, my V1. I sold it as a bottle opener. You can see here it's on the top of the football tray. It's over here as a cheese board. Made $121 selling those as scraps. So one man's trash, you never know. I have to talk about our CNC SIG. It's in this room, the first Sunday of every month at 9 a.m. It's free. It's usually donuts. It's a bunch of makers talking about what inspires them in the world of digital design. We talk through things, and actually, I know we're doing a tour after this. See the shop. I've got time booked on the big CNC. I'm going to be in there all afternoon working on my next project for that CNC SIG. So come by and talk to me if you want to see the CNC. Talk through that. Our upcoming classes at Asmbly. We've got quite a robust curriculum. We have a class starting in 35 minutes on CNC topography. James is teaching our beginner CNC, which is our 101 class at the end of the month. Tommy's teaching our shaper class also at the end of the month, and then I'm teaching again in August. We have several other upcoming classes that are in development in the world of CNC. I had 102 ready to done. I've done the dry run, and then life happened and I haven't had a chance to teach it, but that'll be coming. That's kind of geared towards people who maybe have taken the 101 class and haven't practiced, even though I've told you to practice. And so you come in, you'll do stuff like the stack text sign that's hanging out there on the wall. A lot of questions around flip carving and 3D carving. So we're gonna have some classes on that coming in the fall. And then we actually will have Mosaic software, which is specialized towards cabinet making. If you wanna make your whole kitchen, you can see the cabinets there in the textiles room were made with Mosaic. If you go in there afterwards and see those as well. So we've got a really robust CNC curriculum. Highly encourage you to take part of it. I talk fast. What questions do you have?
What does CNC stand for?
Computer numerical control. Think of it as basically a computer controlled router. You're using the, the question is what's a CNC? That's one of the things I really like about it is digital design, because I can't cut a straight line to save my life. And so the challenge in it is the design, the programming, everything else. Once you get past that initial 80 or 90% of the computer side, then it's traditional work hold downs, cutting everything else, but also I could go make 20 of these now that I've got that done and ready to go, and that's the really nice part about that as well.
So you use it for cutting the outline, but you also use it for planing?
You can use it for planing, yeah. We have big spoil board bits, so like back on, that's what I did on this one.
Yeah.
When you do an epoxy board, that black epoxy in the middle, it spills over the top, and it's trying to sand epoxy, you'll be here for 3 weeks. And so by putting a big old bit in and just going down a 16th at a time, you're basically using a big planer, and that couldn't fit through our planer because it's too wide. And so you basically can use it as a big planer, which is great as well.
What's the diameter of that face that you're talking about?
I'm sorry, couldn't hear.
What's the diameter of that planing bit, basically?
Oh, of the surfacing bit? We've got one out there, it's 2.5, that is huge, and it's a 1/2-inch spindle, so I mean, that's what you want, but Rico was firing up the BattleBot before, and the noise, like that thing starts spinning, it's got its own center of gravity as it's going, so it's sizable. And so I've done like contract work on surfacing boards for other people and stuff that it's worked well on for epoxy stuff. So, yeah. It's pretty damn clean, and then you pair that with the wide belt sander we've got out there, and it's great. So yeah, no, it's a game changer for being able to do stuff. So, what other questions?
The size of the CNC?
Oh yeah, our CNC is 5 foot by 10 foot, our big one with a vacuum table, which is awesome for like cabinet making. Or I have 5 sheets of MDF I'm cutting up this afternoon out there because I'm making a table for my CNC at home actually. And so it's great in terms of the ability to just kind of do stuff. That's pre-COVID, that was a $15,000 machine or whatever it is. They don't even sell the small one Laguna does anymore, and the big one now is up over 30. I mean, so it's a pretty sizable investment we've made here in the CNC. So, any other questions? Yeah.
Certain kind of woods work a little bit better, like so it can split.
Yes.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. The question was, is there certain woods that work better than others so they don't split? It's a multi-tiered answer. And so some of it comes down into your blank preparation and your glue ups, that type of stuff for that type of thing. Certain woods and certain sharp bits and certain types of bits do better than others. Certain vectors do better than others. It's a bit of a complicated answer based on what you're trying to do. I always say though, when you're start with scrap plywood and cut circles and squares and get going on stuff. And that's kind of what I always teach students, to start with that. Start small before you go off and you do compass roses out of epoxy, and stuff like that. So, yeah. Any other questions? All right.
Awesome.
Feel free to touch it and do whatever.